We are also going to be recording. Okay, we should be live now. So, hello, my name is Jonathan Cohn. I'm the chair of the Issues Committee at Progressive Massachusetts, and it's been fun doing a whole series of these talking about the kind of short-term and long-term responses needed to the pandemic, as well as how it shows how much was already broken in society and needs fixing on the other side. Today's May Day, kind of like the International Workers' Day, so I thought like a great person to have on would be Gillian Mason, who's Executive Director of Jobs with Justice. So Gillian, welcome, and can you say a little bit about yourself and about what Jobs with Justice does?
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much for having me. This is very exciting. I love to celebrate May Day. Yeah, my name's Gillian Mason, co-director at Jobs with Justice. Jobs with Justice is a coalition of over 160 different groups all across the state, unions, community groups, other labor groups like worker centers, people of faith and students. So, we all come together, and basically our one unifying principle is building working class power. So we do a lot of work on doing union solidarity, helping with new organizing drives for workers who are not organized. We do a lot of work with undocumented folks, making sure that undocumented workers know their rights and have access to them. We stop deportations. We support public education. And I could go on, but really.
No problem. So for those watching, talk a little bit about what's happened on May Day in Massachusetts. Are there any events that you were able to participate in, or you were kind of aware of, or what?
Yes.
Or still to happen that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, actually, so I know that a lot of your followers are people who are already like plugged into Massachusetts progressive life, and if they are, they probably knew Jose Soler, and there will be a virtual memorial happening tonight for him. So all of it is on our Facebook page. There was actually a full day of events. It was maybe the most packed May Day we've had recently, actually. We had a lot of car protests and car rallies. So
nice.
Folks going around and, just doing kind of like happy parades to support workers. Also doing more protesty stuff to advocate for like better protections for workers. And then, we had a story time hour for children.
Now
that all
any favorite stories that you got to read?
What was that?
Any favorite stories that you got to read?
I believe Woke Baby is this is the book that Lily got to read. So no, it's been a full day of stuff. We had a really great convening with the Mass COVID Response Alliance, which we're part of, pushing for, progressive policy and really looking to, we're not going to go back to the way things are, right? So, yeah.
On that point, in terms of response, I think it'd be great to talk a little bit about what needs to happen now, and then some of the things, as you're talking about, need to happen kind of shortly thereafter. What are some of the things that, especially here in Massachusetts, that our state legislature could be passing today or tomorrow to address what's been happening so far to work?
Yeah, I think that ultimately really what's happening here is that employers are, as employers do, they are constantly trying to squeeze labor, right, in order to make ends meet. And at a time when it's harder than ever to make ends meet, they're squeezing labor more than ever. This huge class divide that's become so obvious, right? Like you've got a group of people who can sit at home and work on their computers, and then you got a group of people who have to go out into the world and expose themselves to this virus, right? Employers are falling down all over the place. And really, I think what the legislature needs to do, one of the most important things they need to do, is to put protections in place so that to set the floor so that these employers can't continue to just race to the bottom towards the common denominator. Most of what we hear on the ground is folks who want protective equipment. That's been one of the big things, and it's honestly, it's across all industries. It's folks who are doing deliveries, it's folks who are nurses, it's folks who are doing all different kinds of frontline work. There are a lot of things in the legislature right now that are going to provide, different protections for different groups of folks. In addition to that, I think that, the two things that have become most important are paid sick time and unemployment insurance, right? So paid sick time first, we're proud to be part of the Raise Up Massachusetts group coalition. And so with that group, we're going to be pushing, along with Progressive Mass, we're going to be pushing for an expanded paid sick days program. One of the things that we found about the paid sick days program that we actually won a few years back is that you actually have to accrue your sick time, right? So you have to work a number of hours before you get a certain number of hours of sick time. So one of the things that I think is really important that this would do is it would allow people to have paid sick time immediately, 15 days of paid sick time immediately that they could then take, and that will at least cover a quarantine period for someone if they have to self-isolate. So that's
you shouldn't end up having to lose the job that you just started because we're in a pandemic.
Yes. So there's that. So the unemployment insurance thing is really huge because no matter what happens, so many people are already losing their job, and
25% in Massachusetts for unemployment already.
Yeah. Oh God, it's so sad. And I mean, it's devastating. And I think that a lot of times we can push back, but there are a lot of businesses that are actually that are really having a hard time right now. You know what I mean? A lot of our favorite local businesses and stuff like that are really struggling right now. So I think that actually it is really, really important that the government step in and make sure that unemployment insurance is accessible to all, including folks who are gig workers. And then also, one real issue that we've been seeing is just that immigrant workers are getting left behind right and left in this. And so one of the current pushes in the Massachusetts legislature is to make sure that employment insurance will cover people who work on ITINs, which is a tax ID number rather than a social security number. So when folks are undocumented, a lot of them work on these ITINs instead with a social security number. And so currently eligible for
even though they're paying into the system.
It's really, it's the same with everything, right? It's the same bullshit we've always seen, right? But it's now just exacerbated, right? Everything is 100% worse than it used to be.
Unemployment, I feel, is a good example of that, because I remember always thinking about how our unemployment numbers always discounted that kind of all of the people who just gave up and stopped looking for work. So there's always that underreporting about in terms of unemployment numbers, as well as people who don't even know how to file a claim in the first place.
Oh my God, totally.
You have that loss, but then now, and I thought that was bad in terms of what it would actually have been in terms of an incomplete recovery from the last session over a decade ago. And this is just sorry, bam, again. But worse.
Yeah, seriously. And God only knows how underreported the unemployment numbers are now. That's nuts, They're already crazy enough, and we know that they're not even as
because we've seen, and I'm sure you've seen this, a number of language issues with people even being able to access unemployment insurance, given kind of the understaffing of the agencies.
It's been really huge. One of the things that's been happening that I think is a really it's an exacerbation of a situation that is always there, which is that as the government gets defunded through tax starvation, the government relies more and more on nonprofits to be filling in the gaps, So we actually have government agencies, mayors and stuff. We started, I'll do a pitch for our, biggest and most ambitious project right now, which is.
I wanted you to, so go.
So Masum Document is a huge project that we started to raise $1 million to give direct relief to undocumented immigrants in Massachusetts. Now we know that there are 250,000 at least undocumented immigrants in Mass. Again, underreported statistics, right? But we determined that if we raise $1 million, we can provide some small direct financial assistance to 3,000 individuals and families. And so we are currently in the process. We've raised about $500,000 so far. We're very—
Anybody who's watching this should also donate. And how do they do that?
They should go to masundocufund.org, and they can donate directly there, or they can check out the Mass Jobs with Justice Facebook page. And also, I will put it in the comments when we're done making this video.
I can do that. I can do that right now.
Oh,
But
yeah.
Talking about it.
You're a millennial. You can multitask.
In terms of Facebook, Amy Blanchett says hi.
Oh, hey, Amy Blanchett. Love you, girl. So yeah, I mean, so the reason that we started that really was because, like, as we were sort of getting involved with the legislative process around this, it just became clear that undocumented immigrants are not going to get, you know, they're not going to get any kind of help from the federal stimulus, right? And so that's why we decided to start this. So on our first day, we got 5,000 applications.
Wow.
Which is huge. And that means that we have to keep on raising money. So please, if you're watching this, please donate if you can. You know, $300 means that we can take care of one family, you know, help to keep the lights on in their house, help to buy groceries. So yeah. But again, because government is not able to handle these things, right? We're finding that lots of government agencies are actually referring undocumented immigrants to the Undocumented, right?
Oh, wow.
So it just like, it totally, and a lot of other nonprofits are finding the same thing, that the state is, just not providing any kind of relief. And so, what that means is that they're relying on nonprofit groups to fill in the gaps, which is not how it should be.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it should be a public good, kind of, there are things that should be public goods and public services that require us to actually invest in our people and their well-being.
I mean, yes, that would be great. That would be cool. Just tell the governor we're all set. Right. I mean, no. So again, everything that's bad has gotten worse. But the good news is that everything that's good about bad has gotten better too. So what I mean by that is that hold on here with me for a second. So we know that when times are bad for workers, right, that workers tend to stand up. And so, like, for example, right after the last recession depression, right, we saw workers in industries that have traditionally not been unionized, at workplaces that are traditionally not been unionized, standing up, saying, fight for 15, we want a union, that kind of thing, right? So we know that when times are bad, workers fight back. And when we fight,
we win.
Thank you. Yes. So these are the hardest times we've seen in a while, and workers are fighting back so hardcore. It is pretty incredible. I think there's a major shift of consciousness going on. All of a sudden, people realize the guy who works at the grocery store is essential to my life, right? Mm-hmm. The guy who works at the grocery store, in some ways, is keeping me alive. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, yeah, the one example I always give is that I was at a press conference a week before the coronavirus hit the U.S. Right, it was with Senator Markey, and he was announcing his new Deal for New Americans, which is his immigration reform program, which is great, and we really support it strongly. That being said, I've been doing healthcare activism and activism around immigration and workers' rights for a long time. I have never once heard a mainstream reporter ask anyone about how immigrant workers are going to get their healthcare. But all of a sudden, at this press conference, when COVID was coming and it became clear that we are literally only as alive as the least secure person in our society, all of a sudden, now people are thinking, oh, wow, wait, undocumented people do need healthcare.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Something that we have known for a very long time. But again, it's a huge shift in the popular consciousness that all of a sudden people who have not been engaged with these ideas for a long time are just suddenly realizing, and
I think that's like the kind of the fundamental thing when it comes to with public health, that I think that there is that growing realization of how your health is connected to everybody else's health.
Yes.
And that needs to be the foundation for the systems that we build.
Exactly, right? I mean, in some ways, it's like the crudest form of solidarity possible, but it is solidarity, right? You know, I mean, yeah.
And then speaking on that point, in terms of like with healthcare, that's going to be a major impact now as people lose it, because we have a system in the US that ties insurance to employment,
Yes.
for the most part,
Yes.
that when you have record unemployment, so everybody's losing that job that's funding health insurance during a pandemic, just seems like a toxic mix.
Yes. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is terribly dangerous. Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, definitely. And a lot of folks right now are taking this moment to seize on, like, we have to recommit to the fight for single payer, you know, to make sure that A, we can come out of this crisis, but B, when the next crisis happens, we're actually prepared for it, you know? And I think that that's really crucial. Like, it's never been more obvious, right?
Yeah.
How these health disparities exist in our communities and how they've gotten there, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And we were talking about kind of with the grocery workers. I know that workers at a number of kind of outlets like Walmart's, Targets, Whole Foods that went on, like Amazon. Like, even though like Amazon probably is doing groceries for many people these days, even though it's a kind of an omnibus, we're going on strike today.
Yes. So I have the full list here. All right. So I've got just the ones that I've been able to aggregate, because a lot of this stuff is, you know, these are all wildcat strikes. So it's, which means, you know, the workers don't officially have a union. So, you know, these are all happening in a really decentralized way. Again, it's very exciting because it shows that there's like a massive shift in consciousness. It's not just in one place, right? So so I have Amazon, Instacart, Shipped, Whole Foods, Walmart, Target, and FedEx. That was my rundown for today. So they're all doing one-day strikes. So the ask is just to boycott them. So it's a little late in the day, but if you were planning on, you know, watching a movie on Amazon Prime, please hold off on doing that. Let's show Amazon that we support the workers.
Yeah, or the final hours in which a grocery store is still open these days, or a Target is still open.
I mean, another thing that's become really obvious, though, is like how good it is to have a union. You know, look at like the UFCW workers at Stop and Shop, right, who managed to secure hazard pay and are still, you know, still fighting for more of the safety protections that they need. They've really, you know, they've been able to accomplish what they have so far because they do have a union fighting with them, you know.
Have any other places managed to secure hazard pay?
I think that a couple of places have. Yeah. I'm sure one of your followers can actually answer this.
Yeah, but no, I think that's a great point about how at a time like this, kind of at the crisis moments, you really do see the value of having kind of structures like unions that do provide that bargaining power, that political power, and
absolutely
in the workplace.
And, you know, I mean, like, look at what's happening at GE, for example, at the GE plant in Lynn. I mean, it's a pretty amazing story, you know. We've got workers who are really in like scary conditions in the factory. They've made some improvements since the workers started speaking up about it, but you know, they're just really close together. They weren't having their stations disinfected between shifts.
Oh, wow.
There was, you know, so it was really a really dangerous situation. I think it's slightly less dangerous now, but still they haven't gotten everything that they wanted. But basically what these workers were saying is, and I think if they were just workers alone, right, they would be fighting probably for better conditions, right? But I feel like the vehicle of the union allowed them to make a more substantial demand and a more transformative demand, which is, what we want you to do is to start hiring back laid off workers and repurpose this factory so that we can make the masks that are so necessary to keep us safe in this country, right?
Yeah.
And that's huge. I get chills still when I think about it, you know, like you got a group of workers and they're saying, okay, we want to keep ourselves safer, but we also want to, keep our frontline workers safer. We want to, you know, really make this a safer world. Which is that kind of thing really excites me,
As it should.
Yes. All this stuff is like, God, it's terrible what's happening. But at the same time, there are rays of hope.
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Yeah. And then to quickly go to one thing you mentioned earlier, when you're talking about the impact on gig economy workers,
Yes.
what have you been seeing about that? Because it's already a place where there was a lot of kind of economic insecurity for people in that sector. What have you been hearing?
I mean, I guess I'm just like, I'm really glad that the federal government came through and actually provided some support for gig workers in the stimulus package. Because I think without that, most gig workers would be really, really just fucked right now. Pardon
Yeah.
me. Yeah, they would be really, no, I don't know another word for it. Yeah, no. So when I talk to gig workers, I mean, I generally just hear that they are worried about their safety and worried about the future. That they're, for now, I mean, yeah, for now, those are mostly essential businesses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so for now, they feel like they're able to keep working and that kind of thing. But
yeah, I think especially like in terms of like a place like Instacart is the one where people like are shopping for others, right?
Yes.
But like especially that now when it was already a rather insecure operation for people, but then probably even higher demand, as well as with all like the class dimensions between who's the one having to go into being paid by somebody else to go into the grocery store for that
Yeah.
the person doesn't want to, and having to bear the risks.
You're literally outsourcing your physical presence in the world.
Yeah.
It's wild, yeah, again, right, it comes down to that thing. There's a group of people who can stay home. There's a group of people who have to go out and expose themselves to the virus,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I saw in the comments that Market Basket also got a bump in pay.
Oh, excellent. Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those workers, themselves, they actually came together, a few years back without a union, but regardless, you guys all remember the Market Basket.
Yeah.
So I think those workers have built up some power through organizing as well.
Nice. And then so you were talking before about like what we need to think of to make sure that we come out of this better.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that whether either you're advocating for now or planning to advocate for to make sure that the kind of the path out of this recession or even depression can come into, and we end up getting an economy that actually works.
Yeah. And I think let's not fool ourselves, right? This is going to be a full-on depression. Like, I mean, employment numbers are already so high so quickly, right? Like there's, I mean, yeah. So, well, I think, it's a couple of things. I think, single-payer healthcare really jumps prominently to mind as something that feels really important in this moment. And again, we have to capitalize on the fact that, not capitalize on, capitalism. We have to take this moment, this little opening where people are thinking about this differently, to start talking to them about how this system could be different. So single-payer healthcare is a big one. And then I think like making these major corporations pay their fair share is like one of the biggest things that's coming out of this, right? Like Amazon is still making a shit ton of money, right? Where workers all over the place are getting fired and and dying. What I mean? And it's just it's egregious, it's immoral, and it doesn't make sense for the economy either. So
yeah, I've seen the stats how like Jeff Bezos just like keeps gaining more and more money during all of this, and as like more and more people are like losing their jobs, and he still isn't paying his workers well or giving them safe conditions.
I mean, honestly, these people should just be ashamed of themselves. They're fucking vampires. I don't know how they justify, but regardless, it's like they need to be paid. They need to be paid their fair share of this, Again, something that's just become very, very obvious. Jeff Bezos is richer and richer and richer for every person who loses a job. You know what I mean? Yeah, no,
and that's and especially when it comes to how much money like large corporations are getting right now makes it even clearer how they need to start. They need to.
I mean, like as someone who's a technically like a small business owner, we were going through the process of applying for the Paycheck protection program, and so it's a long process. It's very difficult, especially for like a small nonprofit that doesn't have like an accounting department or something. Or a small business that doesn't have an accounting department. But then finding out that Shake Shack got that money, the fuck? You know, come on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the government is clearly not doing its due diligence to make sure that even the programs that are theoretically intended for people on the ground are reaching people on the ground. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and then one thing as well, just thinking of, as we kind of get out of this, what are some ways to be able to strengthen the power of unions and kind of worker organizing? But what are some things that you would want to see happen?
I mean, it's so difficult right now because the Trump, Department of Labor is just non-existent, right? He's totally gutted the National Labor Relations Board, which, frankly, wasn't even that strong during the Obama presidency.
Yeah.
And so now is even weaker than it was. And so that's the regulating body that actually, kind of answers worker complaints and makes rulings on, whether workers are allowed to unionize, whether union activities are legal. So it's been very, very difficult. I think, my biggest hope right now is just, honestly, they've got a lot of money and we got a lot of people, you know what I mean? And so, the more workers who are doing these kind of, one-off strikes, the more workers who are saying we're not going to go, even if it's not a formal process. I've heard of a lot of workers who are saying within their workplace, like, okay, we're just going to go to the boss and we're going to tell them that we're not going to go into work without protection equipment or something. So I think that that kind of volume of uprising is to make people realize that we do have to stand up and protect unions as well. And I think that, reversing the Janus ruling, that would be cool. That would be a good way of showing support for unions in this moment.
And remind people about what that ruling was.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So the Janus, we always joke, Janus who? Janus, Mark Janus. He was the person who petitioned he basically didn't want to pay his union. Let me just be honest. He didn't want to pay his union dues. And so basically there's a Supreme Court ruling that said that he shouldn't be forced to pay his union dues. So basically what that means is that folks in public sector jobs can actually get all the benefits of working under a union contract, right? Higher wages, benefits. They have someone who negotiates a contract for them. And they are now not legally required.
And it speaks to a logic of that is that you're negotiating a contract. You can't say this contract is going to apply to all workers except for that asshole Mark. You can't create a carve out to say you're all 900 people let's say 900 people here, 899 of them except for Mark.
Yeah, Mark Janus. Oof, that guy. He left his job, and so he wasn't part of the bargaining unit anymore. So they had a going away party for him that he couldn't attend because he wasn't part of the bargaining unit. Obviously, it was a sarcastic going away party because they were pretty happy to see him go.
Yeah,
just my guess.
Yeah. And in terms of the federal government, are there any other kind of things that, let's say, if we actually had a functioning and progressive federal government that actually what are some things that that said functioning progressive federal government could do to help support workers?
I mean, so many things. Well, one of the things that we're seeing right now is that, again, right, all those old divides are sort of getting replicated, but on a massive scale. So, for example, everyone's seen by now the racial data on who is getting infected from COVID, right? And so, honestly, those disparities really impact working people. And so I think that one of the things that a working federal government could do would be to address some of those disparities and resource disparities within communities. That would be cool. I think that allowing for unions to strengthen would be really amazing. Right now, the federal government really just has their boot on the throats of people trying to organize, and so that's a real problem. Again, healthcare is a huge issue. I mean, one of the biggest issues that working people have at any point in time is healthcare. You know, and if you ask any union, they'll say that most of their time spent at the bargaining table is bargaining over healthcare.
Yeah. And then here's one thing that we've often heard politicians put forth, like a disingenuous argument that, oh, that single payer is bad for unions, or like, I'm not supporting single payer because that would somehow be down to unions. What would you say to politicians or people trying to push those arguments?
I think that obviously it's like a false consciousness. It's not, I think that it's an inaccurate argument. I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately it's just like the majority of workers get screwed by the fact that their employment is tied to their employers. I mean, and I think that, you know, unions will find, I think that right now, unions are in a position where they've been bargaining for years, right, for the healthcare package they have. They probably traded off pay raises or retirement benefits or something like that to get that package. So I totally get why they're wedded to that healthcare package right now. It represents not just their members' healthcare, but also years and years of trade-offs in order to get it. So I completely understand that thinking. That being said, we have to do something to eliminate this as a source of leverage that employers have over workers, and to take it off the table. A union should not have to bargain about the measures that keep their members alive. I mean, that's another thing. Like, I just think that the thing that people should take from this is that there are no half measures anymore. There is no point between alive and dead, if we do the right things, we can keep ourselves and each other alive. If we do the wrong things, if we do it half-ass, everybody dies. Yeah. And I don't want to be, I'm not being glib about that. I mean that very sincerely, Yeah.
No, which is very true. Have you, and it would be wonderful if after this we do start seeing more people embrace the concept of single payer healthcare, because it does that. If you're taking that perspective of your health is dependent upon everybody else's, that is embodied in like in a system where everybody gets covered by the best that the government can provide us, not when it's your insurance is what you're willing to pay for, what your boss is willing to provide you, and you have to deal with a bunch of bureaucratic paperwork in a for-profit company.
Yeah, right-wing people like to talk a lot about the right to life, but what has become very clear in this pandemic, right, is that the things that actually give people life and keep people alive are the very things that right-wingers are looking to deny them always,
Yeah. No, it's been absurd when you do have politicians who do talk about how quote unquote pro-life they are, and then talking about how they're okay with old people dying. But and just like, and how glib they are in their being like,
the same thing with like
you can bring everybody back, and if that leads to like a mass genocide of the senior citizens. But they're like,
like that's fucking terrifying. People are literally saying out loud, well, if only senior citizens or people with disabilities are dying, do we really have to take this that serious? The idea that that's actually that's occurring in their heads is crazy. Yeah. The fact that they would say it out loud is even crazier.
Yeah.
I am. I mean, that's a whole other piece of it, is the kind of the way that our elders and communities with disabilities are going through this, and I really worry about what it's going to look like after the the big like second wave that's coming.
Yeah.
We're already losing so many people, and
Yeah. And then so to go to one point you were talking about before about kind of the coalition that you're a part of in terms of planning for how we can rebuild out of this. What are some of the, like, I'd say, let's say, top priorities for like if that here in Massachusetts, our legislature, if it actually like got its act together, what are some things that they could do, either if it's later this year or at the start of next year, to make an economy that actually works for everybody?
Yeah. It's just really hard to imagine where the things that we want to get done. No, much love to all of our friends in the legislature. You guys are great, but they're way too few of you. So I would say, I think passing, again, going back to the idea that to make the corporations pay, I think passing the Fair Share Amendment is like huge, right? Like that has to happen. I think eliminating, I think the rent improvement, the moratorium on evictions that just got passed, which is incredible, and shout out to all the amazing groups that were involved in making that happen. But I think that City Life Vida Urbana and No One Leaves are right now calling for that to be strengthened as well. Housing is obviously, and down to like, what is it, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah, it's like health, housing, and some kind of income so that folks can feed themselves. I think those are the biggest issues right now. But yeah, in the immediate, I would say that eliminating the disparity between undocumented immigrants and other workers in the unemployment insurance program, that's something that's really, really important.
The base of the pyramid for Maslow's hierarchy of needs is your physiological needs of food, water, warmth, rest, shelter. That's the things that like everybody should get as a right.
You would think. Yeah, you would think. Yeah, but again, right? Like how many people are realizing right now that if other people don't have those things, all of a sudden I'm in danger,
Yeah.
Even from a perspective of crude self-interest.
Exactly. Exactly. Like if we actually did have a real concept, like if enlightened self-interest were actually enlightened.
Oh man, we've gotten in enlightened self-interest, Maslow's hierarchy. We're really close to doing like geek bingo here. Right.
Also throwing in like Carl Polanyi and like social embeddedness of the economy.
Good stuff. It's good stuff.
And what else would be on, let's say, like the jobs as justice wish list for like? I know one thing you've been working on this session is about fair scheduling.
Yes, that's absolutely true, and fair scheduling is definitely something that's really, really important. Fair scheduling.
Talk a little bit about what is the issue there.
So, I mean, one of the things that we find, especially after the, after like the minimum wage went up and everything, right? We find that one of the ways that employers tend to retaliate against their workers is by cutting hours or making their hours completely variable. So we have people who work in restaurants or whatever, who basically are, they're not supposed to be, but they're on call, right? All the time. This obviously is not the case so much anymore, but I'm sure it will be at some point in the future. And so, yeah, fair scheduling is really, really important in terms of making sure that workers have advance notice of their schedules, and that employers are actually penalized if they are not providing fair scheduling, not complying with the law. And that means a lot for a lot of workers, but especially women and particularly women of color, who tend to carry a lot of the burdens of care for their households. So taking care of children, taking care of elder family members. And so, if you want to be able to schedule childcare, for example, right, you need to know your schedule in advance.
Yeah. And I feel that's why, as with many things, in kind of sharp relief now, because with kind of all of the schools closed indefinitely, or kind of moving online.
Yeah.
If you're a parent, you need to be able to know how are you going to plan to make sure that somebody is actually watching your child if you have to go to work.
I mean, it's been crazy. It's wild, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, even in the sector where we work, in nonprofits, where we do most of our work remotely, right? Most of our work has been taken online or whatever. I feel like I've gotten to know all of my coworkers' kids so much better. Hanging in the background on Zoom calls.
Shout out to Lily's baby.
Which is very, I mean, it's a lot on parents right now. It's a lot on parents right now. Oh, but speaking of school, one thing that I did want to make sure that I mentioned is that one thing that really needs to happen right now is we need to have actually a moratorium on student debt. What the federal government has done is to provide some relief for folks, but their loans are still going to accrue interest. It only applies to folks with federal loans and not private loans. And it only applies to folks who are actually paying their loans currently and not to folks who are in default. And the folks who are in default, right,
who need them.
these are the folks who need it most, right? And they're not getting any relief from that federal. So we're working together with Phenom, which is the Public Higher Education Network of Massachusetts. I'm on the board, I should know the name. The MASA, the Massachusetts Education Justice Alliance, and also the MTA, the Mass Teachers Association. So we're working now to do some work around debt relief, and again, to like use this moment to talk to people about what would it look like if we canceled all of this debt, not just as the right thing to do, because that argument apparently doesn't work with a lot of people, but also because it would be an economic stimulus at this point. Yeah. I mean, even before the pandemic, you know,
Exactly.
Student debt would have been a huge economic stimulus.
Yeah, because it's a thing that, like, from that basic, if you're looking at from that purely economic logic, if you want people to be spending money, they need to have money. So if you're freeing up their debt, that's additional money that they can be spending, rather than it's going to pay off like debts for something that should never happen. For higher education, which people should not have to incur debt to attain.
Honestly, like I'm a socialist, God damn it. Why should I have to explain capitalism to these people?
Right? Again, to the point of like, if you're actually doing things in enlightened self, like how the promise of enlightened self-interest often breaks down because it is often just not enlightened.
Yeah. These are weird times, Jonathan Cohn. Weird times.
And I think with higher ed, one thing that I was talking about when I was talking with Roxana Rivera from 32BJ, and also Zach and Amy from Phenom when I had them on earlier, about the impact on workers in the higher education sector too. Just thinking of higher ed.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's really tough. My partner actually works in higher education. He's a professor at a local nursing college, and yeah, it's really, really tough. The schools that are getting hit the hardest are the schools that have dorms and residences, and so you know, they're losing all of this money. That being said, these are schools that have huge endowments, so really no need to be cutting wages, laying off workers right now. Dip into that endowment, or maybe, you know, God forbid, reduce some administrator salaries. And in the higher education system, it's really a question of increasing investment, obviously. So
I would even think that if you were one of the very well-researched universities, that if you actually, again, this is like, if you were clever enough to think about PR, if you got a few alumni, very rich alumni, which they have many, to donate to you specifically for the sake of keeping all the people employed, that would be good PR for you.
Yeah, I think I like that. I don't know. Every company right now is bragging about how generous they are because or whatever, you know, like every advertisement is like, you know, Toyota, we're taking care of you during this crisis, you know? Harvard could do the same thing if they want.
Exactly. And it's like, you get better goodwill if you like actually do it. Rather than just running ads about how great you are in this moment, if you're actually like paying your workers well, providing good conditions, providing the benefits that people need.
No, it's true. That would be some earned media.
Yeah.
Who do we know at Harvard? We got to get on the phone here.
And then, in terms of public, when I'm thinking of in terms of like higher ed as well as K to 12, one thing that I've been thinking about is let's say the budget, right? Because as you have the kind of loss of revenue coming with the depression, the states and municipalities are going to want to start like taking an axe to everything.
Yeah.
Kind of, what are your thoughts on like how can we make sure that doesn't happen? Because like higher ed would definitely be on the chopping block. Teachers, like kind of teacher positions and staff and like support positions in schools would be the chopping block, as well as like in many kind of important services.
Again, it's like, okay, we're going through a public health crisis where we need like brain power more than ever. The race to get a vaccine is really intense, you know what I mean? Like you would think that that now higher education would be more important than ever.
Yeah, no, it's that perverse incentive in that like the things that we most need in a time of a depression or a pandemic perversely end up being the things that people start cutting during
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so I think honestly, the only way to make sure that that doesn't happen, the same with all the rest of the stuff we've been talking about, the only way to make sure that this stuff, you know, to make sure that this situation, that we emerge from this situation as healthy and safe as we can be, and on the right track towards the kind of economy that'll prevent this kind of disaster from happening again, right? Obviously, we can't prevent, you know, naturally occurring viruses. By the way, the CDC does say that it's a natural. To all of my friends on Facebook who think otherwise. But yeah, no, I mean, it's a question of actually like emergency preparedness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so we have to continue to push. And I think that we're really finding out what does advocacy look like in this period. You know, obviously the thing that I think like, you know, but both Progressive Mass and Jobs with Justice, one of the things that we would really love to do right now is to go have a protest at the State House. Flood the hallways, go lobby people.
Yeah.
Obviously not an option right now. So it's like, what does that look like online? How do we put pressure online? And I think that
what are some interesting things that like that at Jobs with Justice that you've been thinking about and experimenting with about like what activism looks like at this moment?
I mean, honestly, a lot of it has been digital. We're really still working it out. You know what I mean? A lot of people have been doing these car protests. We've heard, you know, mixed responses about those. So I think that folks are still working out that tactic. Yeah, honestly, like at this point, we really need, especially like all of these super creative millennials. Who are already leading our movement. We need to put additional pressure on them to help us innovate.
So like the one thing that I was actually has been talking about with a friend is like you know how like you have like the bubbles that some people can be in? Like is there like a creative use for that? For like
I totally did have a moment where I was imagining us all in like those like you know, like the hamster balls or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
like you can even talk about like criticizing the like elected officials who are living in a bubble and not realizing the stuff right now.
Okay, this is a good idea. This is a good action. You set the date, I'll find the bubble. Set.
The other thing was like people who have mascot costumes are like actually good in terms of like, protecting you from breathing on other people or other people are breathing on you because you're protected by the like whatever the hell the mascot is that you're inside of.
I don't really know about that, but I do know that a lot of parents have actually had a lot of luck getting their kids to wear masks when they, you know, do like a Spider-Man, make it part of a Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, costumes. I mean, there's got to be stuff that we're going to come up with.
Yeah.
I think right now we're all really focused on that rapid response, which is shit. You know what I mean? Like during a crisis, like you always want to be like, you know, yeah, it's like that old story, right? About the babies in the river. You know that one?
Remind me. I feel like I probably do, but I also want to listen to tell them the story about the babies in the river.
I'm pretty sure that this is a story that came from indigenous people and activists and then got co-opted by various politicians over the course of history.
The story of the United States.
Yeah. So basically the story is this, right? You're walking down the river. Let's imagine we're walking down the Charles River together, down the Esplanade someday in some other time. and you see a baby wash up on the shore of the river, right? What are you going to do?
I stepped away because I was like, my multitasking on Facebook, I accidentally clicked and opened the video and started hearing the playback on me.
So, all right. So the first instinct is to pick up that baby and get it out of the river, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, so we pick up the baby, we're gonna get it out of the river. We keep walking, and then another baby comes and washes up on the river. And it's like, oh God. So what do? Pick up, you know, and basically we need to be picking up the babies out of the river, but there needs to be someone who goes further upstream and says, who the fuck is putting these babies
in the river? Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, it's very clear that we need both right now. Unfortunately, I think that what they tend to do is that they take advantage of the crisis when we're really invested in rapid response to make policy changes that'll impact us farther down the line. So that's why it's really important as we're doing mutual aid and as we're doing crisis relief that we're also looking towards progressive policies and really defending against whatever horrificness is coming next, you know?
Yeah.
Legislature, I mean.
Yeah, no. And then thinking in terms of some of the things that are already a problem before and we need to protect again. You spoke a little bit about the kind of the impact of the crisis on undocumented workers. What are some things that Massachusetts could be doing better to protect the the rights of the undocumented workers in the state that we should have, the many things that the legislature should do that they really should have done like 5, 10, even more years ago.
20, 30,
But,
yeah. I mean, I think ending cooperation with ICE is huge, right? They need to stop police from turning people over to ICE. It's disgusting, and it's not the intended function of state government to deport people. And then the driver's license bill is very, very important.
and remind people about what that is.
Yeah, sure. So basically that is, well, the problem that it solves, right, is that undocumented people are frequently unable to get driver's license because they don't have the documentation. Now that the Real ID Act is a thing, it requires more and more documentation, and really anyone who's ever been to the DMV can tell you that the documentation that's necessary has gotten worse and worse and worse, more and more paperwork. So, so basically, this is a law that we're looking to pass in Massachusetts this session that would allow undocumented people who are qualified to drive to take the test and get themselves a driver's license. And that is huge for workers because it means that people can get to work, get their kids to school, you know, really function as part of the community as opposed to living in fear. I talked to one woman who her mom is undocumented, and they had to take a long drive to relocate her mom. And yeah, I mean, it's terror, you know, terror the entire time down, because at any point someone could stop you, and turn you over to ICE. So
I feel like it's especially severe now, given the fact that people are told not to take public transit. And people are often priced, especially if you work in Boston, which is increasingly unaffordable, you probably can't kind of easily walk to work. And now you are being told you shouldn't take public transit to work. So if you do have a car, you might want to drive. And that might be safer for you, even though we don't really want people to be driving. It might be it might just be a safe option right now. And you should be able to do so.
Exactly. Yeah, again, something that's necessary in normal times, and in these very abnormal times, even more necessary. So I think that those are really huge. Ending cooperation with ICE and making sure that we have that immigrant workers are allowed to get driver's licenses. On the federal level, there needs to be immediate, you know, immigration reform, obviously. I mean, the number of people who are dying now in the death camps at the border is shocking and disgusting. I mean, it's very clear to me that the logic of anti-immigrant sentiment is genocide, basically. The same thing with the logic of racism, right? We're seeing the end results of that, you know.
Especially when you start seeing a number of let's say conservative governors who are pushing to reopen their states, mainly because they probably see it as a good thing, the racial disparities as a good thing, as well as wanting to get people kicked off unemployment if they don't go back to work. The fact that going to work will be risking their lives every day.
Yeah, so that's a huge thing. There is one thing on the city level, though, I think is really important to lift, which is that before the pandemic started, some folks at the Boston Teachers Union, the Boston Education Justice Alliance, and also the Student Immigrant Movement had started a campaign. They found out that BPS was actually sharing information with ICE. And so on the local level, if folks are listening from Boston, it'd be great to give your city councilor a call and note on that. We want to make sure that Boston Public Schools and that our government in general, our state government, is not feeding into the disgusting immigration.
And then schools especially just should be that safe, welcoming environment, because how are students supposed to learn if they're kind of fearful for their well-being and safety?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then I think that all the points we're talking about is one thing I always think is so important for people to realize is about how Massachusetts isn't this golden, like progressive utopia that I feel like many people here like thinking we are, and people in other, reinforced by their friends in other states telling them that it is, as well as a tendency of people in Massachusetts wanting to fix all 49 other states.
Yeah, that's true. That's why we exported Romney Care to the rest of the
and that it's so important to realize that, like, when we're still seeing things like kind of cooperation with ICE happening here in like good little liberal Massachusetts.
That's right.
That's right. We need to be taking action, like here, like you need to be fighting for like better things on the federal level and in other, and protecting the like the states that have like, who have, let's say, who might be even worse off than we are, but we also need to make sure that conditions are better here for people, for the vulnerable populations that are being left behind.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of our progressivism here in Massachusetts is half-assed progressivism, you know, it's these kind of halfway measures and compromises. And again, it's just not enough, you know what I mean? I'm sick and tired of hearing, well, we have it better than, you know, whatever, like whatever our state or, you know, like this isn't working. It's still not working.
That actually reminds me of like a kind of like a good analogy, like to throw in again, like in terms of like the wonky math analogy, is like if you keep getting a half of a loaf and a half of that 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 loaf, you never get the full loaf. Like it is math, like given the math that you get ever closer to getting the loaf, but mathematically, if you keep getting like a half and a half of that and a half of that and a half of that and a half of that, you never reach one.
That is a really good point. That is a really good point. Where's my loaf?
But since I like kind of don't hold you more than an hour, first of all, do you want to make, for those who tuned in late, what is the Masum Document?
The Masum Document is a very ambitious project to provide direct relief to immigrant workers, you know, most of whom would be completely unable to secure any kind of the stimulus that's coming down from the government. And so we are trying to raise $1 million. We are at $500,000 already. And we are providing, with that $1 million, we'll be able to provide relief to 3,000 individuals and families. And so we have a very secure process that we set up to protect the identity of folks who are receiving this money. It's set up through our website, which is www.masundocufund.org. And yeah, if you can, you should donate. Even, you know, the 3,000 workers, which is our goal to help, right? You know, there are 250,000 undocumented people in Massachusetts at least, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, we have a ways to go. We have a ways to go.
And so parting thoughts, all right, whether in terms of like insights to share with people watching an hour later or actions you want them to take.
Well, I would love it if folks wanted to go to the Jobs with Justice Facebook page, where we have on our May Day post, we have a fantastic list of resources, and I'll actually, we can maybe post the link on this video.
Yeah, awesome.
So we basically have like a clearinghouse there of the active campaigns that we're involved with. And it's all the way from the postal workers to, you know, housing asks and, you know, just everything in between. And so a lot of those are actions that you can take from your home. If you were to literally run down a list of 12 or 13 action items, it would take you 5 minutes. And so that's one way to show your solidarity, and also to keep in the loop. I think folks should join your local mutual aid group. We're about solidarity, not charity. So finding ways that we can work together to do for each other. And then, yeah, if folks want to volunteer at Jobs with Justice, we have more work. Whenever there's more injustice, we have more work. So we have more work than we have hands for. So we'd love to talk to anyone who wants to get more involved. They can contact me personally.
And if people want to follow you on Facebook or on Twitter or visit your website, where do they go?
So on Facebook, we're Massachusetts Jobs with Justice, ! And on Twitter, we are at MassJWJ. And I think we're just setting up our Insta a little bit of time. Sounds
good. Well, again, Gillian, thank you so much for joining this evening. Thank you for all the amazing work that Jobs with Justice does.
Oh, no, thank you for all the amazing work you do. And this was really, this was a fun conversation for a terrible time. All right, thanks a lot.